Hi, my name's Vince Sheehan, and today I'd like to talk about A Clockwork Orange by Anthony Burgess. And I'd like to go through this this novel, exploring how the plot, the narrative structures put together, as well as the themes that crop up in this book. Now, this was first published in 1962, and it proved to be Burgess's most popular work. Something I understand troubled him a bit, as he wanted to be known for his other great novels as well. But of course, this is also famous for the Kubrick film based on this as well, which is perhaps a subject for another video. But the original novel is shocking, even by today's standards, funny as well, original, particularly with the use of language, and it brings up very relevant themes, I think, particularly for today's society. Now, Clockwork Orange is all about Alex, who is this feral teenager. He's this 15-year-old, and he just goes around causing mayhem. And quite helpfully, Burgess puts his story into three parts, or three acts. And the three acts very much spell out Alex's journey throughout this book. In part one, we're introduced to this 15-year-old with his friends, his fellow droogs, as he calls them, and they just go around committing acts of violence because it's fun for them. They have no sense of responsibility, self-control of how their actions impact on others. They beat innocent people up. They rape girls, even as young as 10. They break into people's houses. They vandalise. You know, you name it, they do it, and it's all just a big game. It's all a laugh for them. They go to these bars where they have this milk with drugs in. And in these early chapters, you realise that this book is quite wonderfully written in a new kind of slang. This book's set in the not so distant future, probably about now actually, as I'm doing this video. And the characters, as Alex and the youths, speak in this slang, which is with these made-up words. And it's really, once you get into it, you know, they really, some of the phrases that come up, you know, really, and these words really stick in your mind, and rather funny as well. I mean, this book is funny. Alex kind of has this rather authorised version of the Bible language as well in his slang. So he often finishes with his sentences with "oh my brothers," and there's lots of "thou" and "thee" and all this, with these weird words like "yar blockos" and the Gulliver, which is the face, and ultra-violence, horror show, which is really good, Devotchkas, which are women, and you know, it's so clever the way this book's written, and it's not inaccessible either. You know, give it a few pages, you're into this language, this slang. Anyway, by the time we get to the end of this first part, Alex has gone too far. He's killed this elderly lady, and even by the Droog standards, this is bad. Now that the Droogs are his gang. So Alex is caught by the police, and we're into the second act. Alex is imprisoned, and Alex experiences something of the violence of prison life, physical and sexual. But then he gets wind of this new treatment, and this new treatment whereby Alex could be released from prison earlier if he agrees to it. The prison chaplain has reservations about this. Alex has been helping in the prison chapel. But then eventually Alex is put forward as a kind of guinea pig for this. And you might know the film. I think the film does this part well. Alex is strapped to a chair, his eyes are stuck open, he can't blink, and he's forced to watch the most terrible acts of violence and depravity, and he can't look away. And eventually this has the effect of making him sick as he watches this violence. He's pumped with these drugs as well. And every time, and over time, he realises that through watching these terrible images, of Nazism, Nazi concentration camps, Japanese prisoner of war camps, rape and violence and murder, etc., he realises that even when he thinks violent thoughts, he is sick. He feels physically sick. It seems the treatment is working. And it culminates with Alex being put on display by the good and the great of the land, and he's forced to, despite being goaded and bullied by this guy, Alex can't retaliate because it just makes him sick, so he turns into this rather cringing, subservient creature on the stage in front of all these people. He's presented with a beautiful naked woman whom the old Alex would try and rape, but here he can't. He just can't do it. It seems his mind has been altered and Alex has no control over his life. He can't make choices. And this is the central theme in this book. And then in part 3, Alex is released back into the community, and he's beaten up by the police, and which includes some of his old droogs. The police do not come across well in this book, and but then eventually Alex is taken in by this author, this kindly author, who was writing this book called The Clockwork Orange, and it was Alex who raped his wife. But the guy doesn't recognise him at first. And this guy seems to be on the kind of far left in politics, and he wants to use Alex as a kind of tool to bring down the government about this terrible treatment which is going on in the prisons. And the guy brings his friends around, and they're not really concerned about Alex as such. They want to use him for their political gains. And Alex has enough. They want a kind of martyr on their hands as such to bring down the government. But and they almost succeed. They play Beethoven to him. And Beethoven it was a source of supreme joy to Alex before, any classical music. But now it just makes him ill, and it's just the worst thing. And they're playing this music to him, and he decides he's going to try and commit suicide, and he jumps out the window. But Alex survives, and he's taken to hospital. And we're now into the final act. And it seems here that Alex is now out of the control of the left. He's now in the hands of the right, it seems, the government. And they now want to laud him as this guy who has survived and gone through the other side of this treatment. But Alex realises that this fool has kind of cancelled his treatment. He's finding that his old feelings of anger and wrath and lust and whatever it is are coming back to him, vengeance, and they're not making him ill anymore. So he's going back to how he was before. And his parents, who had abandoned him before, they accept him back. And Alex decides to return to the life as a droog. He's only 18 now. But then it seems Alex, that's not quite the end of the story. He doesn't go back to how he was at the beginning. He goes out with his friends, and something's not quite right. Something just doesn't sit right with Alex. And he tells his friends, look, I don't really want to do this. I'm just going to go home. And it turns out that after meeting a friend who's got married in a cafe, a coffee bar, Alex realises that he's grown up, he's leaving those ways behind him, and at the age of 18 he wants to be a better person. he decides to grow up. So what are we to make of this this novel? Well, as I said, the language is fantastic. It's quite a short book as well, so it zips along. It's very well structured. It's very funny as well as shocking in places. And some of the themes are very interesting. I think the central theme is that of choice. If choice is taken away from humanity, are we still humans? Even though Alex was committing the worst crimes, even rape and murder, he was still a free agent. He's still a human. He was free to make those choices. But when receives the treatment and that's taken away from him, he's more like a robot. He's kind of dehumanized. And I think that's where the title of the book comes as well. A Clockwork Orange, which is actually the title of the novel the writer's writing in the book as well. You know, the orange is this thing, this organic, wonderful thing, mysterious thing as well, of course. It's got a peel around it and we don't know what's inside necessarily from the first glance. But but Alex has been turned from this orange into a clockwork orange, just like a robot almost. And is it ever right for us to just turn dangerous criminals like Alex, if we had the capability and the freedom just to turn them into kind of brainwashed carbon copy robots? You know, I guess the streets might be safer, but what does that do for humanity ultimately? Where does that stop? You know, there's a lot of interesting questions raised in this book. It's undergirded by a lot of theology as well, actually. There's a lot about the original sin, I think, the doctrine of original sin, and which of course stretches back to the book of Genesis, Adam and Eve, and the freedom to choose the freedom to choose what is right, what is wrong, rather than being created to be robots, clockwork oranges. So there's a real depth to this novel. And I guess subsidiary themes might include, you know, imprisonment, police brutality, gang culture, which I guess is very relevant today, and I guess that was relevant at the time as well in the late 50s, early 60s in Britain. Of course, violence and politics, how politics can use and exploit people to push a particular agenda. So yeah, A Clockwork Orange, if you've seen the film, which is really good, of course, Stanley Kubrick, but please go and read the book as well if you haven't done so. You know, it really is a great read, a funny read, a thought-provoking read, and incredibly original with that wonderful language as well. Thanks for watching, and please check out the slideshow going through the structure of the book and the themes afterwards. Bye.